trying to tell me? That I can dodge bullets?
No, Neo. I'm trying to tell you that when you're ready, you won't have to.
In fact, IBM is going to make you move it, move it. IBM computers will do the dodging for you using your body's own muscles. Hi, Lester, Withdrew engineer. Just a warning that this video is going to be composed almost entirely of my speculation about the patent that IBM lodged. I have to thank one of my viewers, actually, Troy, for dropping a casual mention of IBM's patent in a comment on my tactile versus visual response time video. I believe this is going to be a rich topic for future research and videos, so my sincere thanks for dropping the mention. So a few weeks ago, Troy mentioned a patent for a system that would allow the wearer to literally dodge bullets. Now, this is a problem that I've been investigating for, or considering, I should say, for many years, which I have chosen to call the gunman challenge. There are many variations of the problem, but all involve dealing with the threat of a gun wielder who is not within touch contact with the defender, or touch range. Of course, when you're within touch range of a gun wielder, although the situation is still extremely dire, several possibilities arise from being able to make contact with the weapon and directing the firing vector away from you while simultaneously attacking or disarming your opponent. I must stress before I say any more that of course compliance is recommended in all cases where an aggressor simply wants to rob the defender of something. The keys to your car are not worth your life. In situations where an aggressor is intent on killing or harming the defender, though, intervention is necessary. In a previous video, I have investigated the time taken for a neutral gun wielder to react and pull the trigger, and compared it to the time taken for the defender's initiating movement to make contact with the weapon, and have shown that it will typically be possible for a well-trained defender to react fast enough to deflect and control the weapon. This is the basis for most gun defense presented in martial arts or self-defense systems, perhaps the most famous proponent of which is the Krav Maga system. However, for any of these techniques to work, the defender must be within touch range of the aggressor, and the aggressor must be in a neutral state. In other words, the aggressor must not be intent on pulling the trigger immediately. This is a valid set of conditions in situations such as armed muggings, hostage situations, and in situations where aggressors wish to demean their victims or psychologically cower them prior to killing them as a power play. However, these conditions are not universal or even potentially the most common. We focus on preparing for situations involving these conditions in terms of training, because the other types of situations involving gun wielders provide very few opportunities for the defenders to intervene to increase the chances of their survival. If an aggressor is intent on shooting and killing a defender when the defender is outside of touch range, the defender's human movement speed will more than likely be too slow for them to react and to reach and incapacitate the aggressor prior to being shot. This may be an interesting investigation for a separate video. So let me know in the comments below whether you want me to investigate this situation to establish exactly how much faster a human defender would have to be to beat the reaction times of a gun wielder when they are just outside of touch range. Of course, a defender in these kinds of situations would default to defensive use of cover and concealment if they are available within that environment. In those kinds of situations, another alternative and perhaps the preferable alternative may be to essentially talk your way out of the situation, if at all possible. Placate the aggressor give them what they want, etc., etc. If cover and concealment are unavailable and civil discussion or capitulation will not ensure the defender's survival, an all-out Hail Mary charge may be all that is possible. Of course, the defender would most likely get shot, but in this scenario, they could possibly survive if they neutralize the aggressor and if they receive medical attention quickly enough after the fact. Depending on the environment, charging away from the aggressor may not be viable. I investigated whether tactile response speeds may be sufficient to allow a trained individual to dodge a bullet, and found that, surprisingly, they were, within certain ranges, of course. As I pointed out in my video, though, I would not be able to dodge a bullet if it was at an appropriate range, because I would not be able to see the bullet in flight. And this is due to the relatively slow speed of human visual processing and slow human visual perception. The gunman challenge is tough, to be sure. But did IBM solve the problem in early 2008? It took some time to track down information on the patent lodged by IBM in March of 2008. There are several old references to the patent in articles on a few online magazines, but the patent was just gone, missing, expunged from the internet. It appears that IBM withdrew the patent and then may have wiped all trace of it. There was even a foreshadowing and an eerie quote on the Firearms blog website. Their final article on the Bionic Body Armor system, published in 2009, read as follows. The IBM bullet dodging patent story, which originally broke on this blog after being discovered by reader Daniel E. Waters, created quite a lot of noise on the internet. Noah at Danger Room noticed that the patent has since been withdrawn. It seems odd to get all that work writing patent, to go to all that work writing a patent, paying lawyers only to withdraw it after news of its existence hits the internet days later. Anyone know if this happens frequently? Well, just as an aside, it's hard to tell why IBM may have withdrawn the patent. It may not be suspicious at all. The writer of the article had already used a PDF converter to convert the patent to a PDF. And he goes on to say, so here is the patent number, 07484451, hosted on a particular server for your viewing pleasure. And he ends off with this really eerie statement. The lesson here is that you cannot delete stuff off the internet. Someone, somewhere, has a copy. And in actual fact, in this case, no one appears to have a copy. The patent was no longer there. It was gone. Even archived resources and resources like the Wayback Machine did not contain a PDF of the actual patent. It was quite mysterious, to be sure. But I have a secret weapon in my arsenal. The Wushu scientist is basically Batman when it comes to tracking down and researching topics. I don't know how she does it. She moves mysterious ways. So I asked her to find a PDF of the full patent for me. Turns out it was actually quite a challenge for her as well, and she nearly gave up several times, but she finally found a weird workaround that IBM must have missed in their mop-up operations. Hidden away on an archive website in a little dimensional pocket that could only be accessed by following a link to a certain point and then going in full reverse, she found and downloaded a full copy of the patent.
I'm Batman.
So I could finally peruse the full patent at my leisure. It was very interesting, to say the least. The patent describes a system called Bionic Body Armor that is designed specifically to address the protection of high-profile public figures, such as politicians and clerics, from assassination attempts when they make public appearances. The patent correctly identifies the problems associated with the use of conventional body armor to protect these kinds of targets from high-powered sniper rounds or projectiles. It describes a system made up of several subsystems that detect an incoming projectile, calculate its trajectory, and then administer electric shocks to the system wearer that are calculated to cause their body to literally throw itself out of the path of the incoming projectile. The system relies on an EM-based detection system. The example provided in the patent is based on radar Doppler Shift. Other examples provided included the use of microwaves and lasers. EM radiation has to be used instead of sound or other types of signals, specifically because the projectiles themselves move faster than sound. However, compared to the speed of the bullet, the EM radiation moves so rapidly that for all intents and purposes, it is instantaneous. The reflected waveform of the radar signal that is projected and bounced off an incoming projectile is compared to the original projected waveform, and this provides some indication of the speed and the direction of the projectile through the phenomenon known as Doppler Shift. The Doppler Shift is a frequency shift which is associated with waves that are projected or reflected from moving objects. A familiar example to most people is are vehicles with sirens blaring, such as, for instance, ambulances or police vehicles moving past. And you'll notice that prior to them arriving at you, the sound is different to when they pass you. In other words, when they're driving away from you. And that's an example of Doppler Shift, except Doppler Shift with acoustic waves instead of with EM waves, which is what we're interested in. In fact, the technology used in cheap microwave intruder detection systems to detect movement is actually based on, in this case, a microwave Doppler Shift. This information is used by an advanced computing system, Go or IBM, to determine if the projectile will intersect the body of the wearer. If so, the zapping and the 1,000-volt Macarena ensues, which hopefully puts the target outside of harm's way. I feel I have to interject at this point to say that there is no small number of politicians and clergy folk who I feel would benefit greatly from regularly applied electric shocks, for their own good. However, jokes aside, do I think the system could work? I think that there is a very strong chance that it would work. I'm really interested in why IBM actually withdrew the patent. Perhaps they felt that that they had other fish to fry at the time, that it wasn't really something that they wanted to get into developing, or perhaps they had sold off resources that would allow them to develop such a system. I don't know. Or perhaps they just didn't want to be associated with a system that caused high-profile people to flop convulsively about on stages like a fish as they dodged bullets. I don't know. I will probably never know. I am so excited by the prospect of the system that actually I would like to try to develop it. I would also like to encourage anyone who has a relevant experience and skill in the necessary areas to consider becoming involved in the project as well. My area of greatest interest and experience is, involves both digital electronics and embedded design. Areas such as signal analysis are not my forte, unfortunately. And as such, parts of the project I'm going to have to bumble my way through. If we make this a community-based project, though, there's no telling what kind of creative evolution the system could experience and what we could develop as a result. After some consideration, I've made a few decisions about the system that I believe may make it much more achievable. The system that I propose will only loosely be based on the patent. It will not be designed for use by high-profile assassination targets, but instead will be designed for first responders, like police and soldiers, or perhaps for your average martial artist who wants to entertain a percentile chance of dodging bullets. As such, it will be significantly dumbed down and simplified. I propose the following modifications. First of all, the system must be self-contained, fully self-contained. IBM's original patent involved the use of large pieces of equipment remote to the wearer. And this would work for a single high-profile target that is roughly stationary. For instance, a politician delivering a speech on a stage. But this will not work for mobile first responders. All equipment must be carried or worn by the first responder. The system must also be cheap. I'm working on a budget here, people. I'm not rolling in it. In addition, the intensity of the electric shocks will be reduced to a point where they become merely a triggering impulse rather than a controlling surge. The system will thus still depend on the intensive training of the wearer. The electric shocks will also be applied at key locations, one at the center of mass of the wearer, to trigger a core reaction instantly, and one at a point that indicates the direction in which the wearer should dodge, perhaps on the left or the right side, for instance. So as you can tell, training will be necessary, very necessary, for the system to function effectively. I'll need to investigate whether my tactile response is improved by using forms of transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation or TENS-like signals instead of simple touch. In addition, I'll have to investigate whether increasing the intensity of the stimulation could potentially increase my reaction and response times. So those are still outstanding investigations. The complexity of the original Bionic Armor system's processing hardware and software would be ridiculously complex and difficult to implement. As such, I propose that the system be simplified to work with only a limited number of sensors, perhaps mounted on the wearer's head or helmet, or perhaps on the shoulders, looking at specific sectors around the wearer's body. So this could, if you like, this could function a little bit like Warhammer 40k's Everser Assassin's Sentinel Array, which in the game and the lore of the universe is supposed to be a pack containing motion trackers and target acquisition systems, allowing the Everser Assassin to sense enemy troop movements from all sides. As an example of how the system could be implemented, you could simplify the system significantly to provide only two sensors that looked at limited arcs in the front of the wearer's body, to the left and the right. The sensors would be keyed to activate electrodes at specific points on the left and the right of the wearer's body. If they detect a bullet moving towards the wearer within their respective arc. The range and arc of each sensor will be limited to perhaps up to 20 degrees and out to a distance of 15 to 20 meters away from the wearer. Based on these simplifications, I propose that we could build a microwave Doppler sensor-based system using microwave horn antennas to channel the signals appropriately. These kinds of microwave motion sensors are quite readily available in packages designed for embedded designers and programmers who are perhaps working to build burglar alarm systems or other types of motion-activated equipment. And they're quite cheap. However, their more obvious limitation is range. I have not seen one of these types of sensors that boasts a range of more than 9 meters. So this problem will have to be solved in some way. These sensors in turn will trigger appropriate electrodes if they detect an incoming projectile in their field of view, causing the wearer to react appropriately based on their training with the system, of course. The system will also need to be controlled by a central controller, which will perform the necessary computation and trigger the electrodes. In my case, I would gravitate towards using a microcontroller because of my background and experience. And of course, as a caveat to this video, this is a short video and there's insufficient time here to discuss the idea fully or to share all of my thoughts on how it would work. But I believe that these points cover the salient features of my proposed dumbed-down system. Now I'll throw the field open to you, my viewers, for any suggestions, expertise, or knowledge that you can share with me that would be useful for this project. I'm keen to do this, so despite the fact that it will likely take me a very long time, I'm slowly going to give it a crack, I should say. I'll add it to my list of projects that I'm busy working on and fiddle around with it from time to time. I was keen to share this with you because I was quite excited by the prospect. It'd be really exciting to pull together what you could say is a crowdsourced bullet dodging system based on the original IBM patent. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all again next time. Cheers.